privilege to listen from Ruben on the new law. And we are still going to be talking about rules and laws and regulation this morning. So today it's all about the laws and the rules and the regulations and the golden rule. The golden rule. We seldom hear this phrase in church or anywhere about the golden rule. What's so special about the golden rule that it is different from the laws and the rules that we live in Australia today or in whichever country you're from? What is so special about the law, the rule? Jesus said, "This is the law and the prophet." Is it the golden rule? Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, God summed it up in a phrase, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." So the principle highlights highlights treating others with kindness, with respect, with empathy, with ethical consideration, conduct, and it appears in all religion. Regardless of the belief of people out there, everyone would have the same mentality on be kind to others. That is the basis of religion in the world, which is good. You think about it, without the fundamental belief and the way we should live, we won't have peace and harmony on earth. Now, the rule is a statement. A rule is a statement, is an obligation to us, men, to people around us. And in the Old Testament, it was a law under the law of Moses. So Jesus said in reply to the Pharisees, this is from Matthew chapter 22, verse 39 to 40. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. For these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus replied to the Pharisees that the greatest commandment was to love God. To love God. Okay? Now today, the same ideology, the same law applies to Christian. It applies to you and me. In Romans chapter 13, verse 9, it says, "For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet, and if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." So many laws, so many commandments, so many rules to follow. That's not the end of it, isn't it? So that's what the Bible asks us to do, without taking into consideration what is the rules of the government yet. So we're going to think about the legal system, rules of conduct. How do we conduct ourselves as human beings living in this country? We live under some legal system, I said earlier. We live under some rules. We have some social norm and different culture and different way of, a unique way of upbringing and also social norms, literally. So unless you're a person who rejects the authority, yes, there are people who reject authority today. They reject the government, they reject authority, and they believe that they are not subject to anything, to any laws. We refer to these people as sovereign citizens. Now, we don't use this word regularly, sovereign citizens. These people are people who don't believe and don't follow the rules. Unfortunately, we do have these people in this country, okay, who claims that they are separate from the government, they are not bounded by the laws, they don't follow the rules. I think we can ask Peter if he's here. It's not a problem that we face only here, but the rest of the world has people who think that they live freely in their own will. So there is a term for this. It's called a pseudo-legal argument. A pseudo-legal argument is used to justify their own belief, their own action, and whatever they do, they think it is right. I believe what I'm doing is right. I believe I can drive around without a driving license. I believe I can park wherever I want. I can do whatever I want. So a sovereign citizen wrongly believes that they are not subject to any law, including the federal law, state, local law, because they think the law is incorrect and therefore invalid to them. They often question the government's authority, even the tax system. They don't pay tax. They question the legal system, and they usually spend their time representing themselves in court. And you will find out why in a bit. And theoretically, and in real life, they are an increasing burden to society. Okay, there are more people like that, and because the way they think, the way they react, the justice system, the police force, and the people that try to run the country has an increased burden, more work to do. Basically, more work to do. Now, just some facts which I've got have on the screen right there. About a year, roughly more than a year or two ago, a magistrate from New South Wales, this is local, said that about 50% of legal complaints in the New South Wales Judiciary Commission are filed by self-represented people. That's who they are. In the last 6 months themselves, the judicial complaints have increased between 20 to 30%, and many of those are filed by sovereign citizens contesting legal matters. Guess what the legal matters are? The legal matters are parking fines, not paying your fines, not paying your bills on time, not paying your taxes. And guess what the magistrate said further? You pick up a file, it might be a parking fine, and there might be 300 pages to this one case in this envelope. And you start to suspect that it's going to be a pseudo-legal argument. It takes 3 to 4 times longer for a judge or magistrate to look through the documents, and it is not a small matter to complete. It often involves small offenses and taking a lot of time in the judiciary system. Painful. So rule breakers, from people who call themselves sovereign citizens to more serious criminals, often find it satisfying to make people's life miserable. Interesting, isn't it? From a psychological mentality point of view, they find it very interesting to see people's life miserable. Now, many people, or many million people, have followed the ideology about might makes right rule. The third point I have there, might makes right rule, has been across the centuries. The rule suggests that power determines what is considered morally right or just. Okay, everyone who thinks that is correct would have the mentality that I have more power than you. I have the strength, I have the authority, and I can determine what is correct, what is the right thing to do according to my principle. Now, historically, this concept refers to a situation where normally a strong person or a politician or a leader or a president dominates, the conversation, make decision, make universal rules, decision, enforcing their action. Now, we think this as a critical, we critically think these actions are actions which are not right, but we still do see this might make right concept behavior exist in the world today. Many people who live in a democratic country like us today think that it's injustice, it is not fair, everyone should make their own decision, we should live peacefully. Yeah, that's not wrong, but power, if you give somebody the ultimate power, regardless where you live, which country or under which system you live in, can be misused. Give the ultimate power to our Prime Minister today, I'm sure he'll misuse the power today. Give ultimate power to any leaders in this country, anywhere in the country, anyone will misuse the power. In Luke chapter 10, verse 30, on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, there was a man who was beaten, robbed, and left to die. Let me just read for you again. Luke chapter 10, verse 30. Jesus answered and said, a certain man went from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among the thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, departed, leaving him half dead. Now, think about this parable, think about this scenario, and we will discuss it a little bit further the next 5 minutes. Okay? Now, I want you to Think about in your life today. You have a neighbor who you're very close with. You have children who go to each other's house if you have children. And your neighbor will come into your house anytime. When they need some cooking oil, sugar, they come to your house, take it without asking. What do you think the neighbor is? Do you feel comfortable? Do you like it that way? I don't think even how close you are to that neighbor, you wouldn't want somebody to walk in your house and say, "I'm just going to grab some sugar from you," right? I'm just going to grab some oil from you. That's taking without asking. That's robbing. That's stealing. Taking without permission is stealing, just like King David in the Old Testament abused his power to take Bathsheba, his wife Uriah, and David did so. He went on further. After committing adultery, he had her husband murdered and compounded his guilt by adding sin upon sin upon sin. 2 Samuel chapter 12. Dictators of the world, coming back to the ideology of might makes right. Dictators of the world today and historically acted the same way, the same rule applies. They have power over power over power. Now, another version of the idea of might makes right is whatever legal is correct. Whatever legal is correct. Okay? Whatever I think is correct, it's correct. Whatever legally is correct, it's correct. And I have power, I have authority over others, I'm correct. An example of that today is a landlord may evict his tenant because he wants to raise his rent. We hear about this every single week, every single day. Rental has gone up, people have been evicted because the owner wants to raise his rent. Okay? And the owner will justify himself that it's perfectly legal. Yeah, of course it's perfectly legal. You can chase the tenant out, raise the rent, and rent it out to someone else. Somebody else will rent it. I've heard yesterday when I was with my kids in an ensemble practice, spoke to a mom and says that, hey, she heard a friend who got evicted, paid $700 a week for a nice little house close to the city, stayed there for 4 years. Rental didn't increase. That's fine because they had very good relationship with the owner, etc., etc. But once they moved out, a few months later, the rent increased to $1,200 a week. That's like $400 or $500 a week. Okay, that's a lot of money. So landlord evicting, getting rid of tenants today is an example of legal justification that we think it is correct because we're legally correct, but at the same time, might makes right comes into picture. Okay, another rule that dominated society today is the don't get involved attitude. I don't care. In Malaysia, there's a Hokkien word called botap. I don't care. Okay, I don't care what happened to you. Don't even bother to call the police when you see an accident. Don't even bother to help when there is a theft going around or there's a robbery going around. Don't even bother to get yourself involved in anything because I'm too busy. You don't hurt anyone by not doing anything, right? I mean, you're not technically not doing anything. But at the same time, you're not helping to make things better. I've been in Australia for almost 10 years now, and I've seen things getting to this direction recently versus 10 years ago. Sad, isn't it? So go back to Luke chapter 10, parable of the wounded man. When the man about whom Jesus spoke about fallen among the thieves and been left severely wounded, Jesus continued the story by saying, Now by chance a certain priest came. Listen to this. A priest came by the road. He saw him. He passed him on the other side. He went away to the other side of the road and continued walking. Likewise, the Levite, when he arrived at the place, came, looked, and passed on the other side as well. Okay? The priest and Levite may have been busy or unwilling to be involved. I spoke about so many parables and so many rules and, attitude. So many things that can happen in the life of the priest or the Levite when they walk past the wounded man. They could be egoistic. They could have the I don't care attitude. I don't know. We don't know. But The Samaritan, through his compassion, became involved, gave him the best he can, took him to an inn for further care, and even paid for the cost of the care. When Jesus then asked, so which of these three do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? Luke chapter 10, verse 36. The answer was obvious to the lawyer who asked the original question, who is my neighbor? So the lawyer asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Who do you want to be your neighbor? The priest and the Levite did not have the might makes right philosophy. Right? They might have the don't get involved rule. The man would have died if the third neighbor didn't turn up to help. Another well-known principle is to treat others like they treat you. So instead of trying to treat others how you want them to be treated, this is treat others like how they treat you. So this is a simple theory. It is a very simple theory. We have a lot of people in church who likes who helps each other, it's nice to each other, but are we doing the same thing? It's more challenging in practice, and I have to say that to myself as well. We have a lot of people in church, very nice people in church. I have to say that, but sometimes it's very challenging to practice being nice back. That's on me. We often hear from our family members, especially if you are young, be nice to your older aunties, older uncles, or your grandparents. But do we hear from our parents, be nice to your church members? Be nice to your brethren, be nice to somebody elsewhere. Tell them. The concept is so rudimental and fundamental that even people, non-Christians, discuss about it. It involves responding on how we are treated instead of how we want to be treated. Now, this comes to fairness and equality. Another rule that very quickly becoming a norm in society, religion, government, school, and many other places is to let live philosophy. This idea of let's just live and let it live, let it be. A principle that emphasizes on tolerance, respect, and non-interference in the life of others. Okay, it's a bit of a few of the policy of the approach that I spoke about earlier. You live, and you let live. It suggests that people should live live as they see fit, without imposing their belief or judgment of others. It goes against what we are taught to, isn't it? The idea of just live by yourself and don't influence others. What are we asked to do as Christians? We are asked to preach the gospel. We are asked to talk to people about Christianity. Now, how often are we trapped in this philosophy? When I did this, I looked at myself on this. I took this mirror, looked at myself like, yeah, I think we are all being molded into a life where we live and let live. It's dangerous, but it's a fact of life. Some critical aspect of this philosophy, think about it, tolerance and respect. We hear every day that we need to be accepting, we need to be think about how we can bring people in from diverse ideology, people who think that their life is correct, and we should not challenge them. Tolerance and respect, that's been taught in school today. Non-interference, the idea of to avoid confrontation, avoid confronting people when they are wrong. Peaceful coexistence, the idea of fostering a peaceful and harmonious society where individuals can exist together peacefully, again without confrontation, again without telling someone that they are wrong. Promoting mutual respect and personal responsibility, where it implies that we should respect others' choices and take responsibility for our own action that doesn't harm others. Now, how many of these, when you take a Christian Bible, when you take a Bible and you take a mirror and look at yourself as a Christian, how many of these almost go against what the Bible taught us to do? The Bible taught us to go out there, preach the word. The Bible taught us to go out there and encourage your brethren, your friends, bring them to church, challenge them, rebuke them. Yeah. When I took this mirror, I look at myself. I'm falling to this, unfortunately. Now, again, it's not a bad thing. Yeah, not a bad thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't be practicing this at all. But you think about it, if 20%, 30% of the world leaders practice any of these, I'm sure we have more peace and harmony in this world. But reflect upon yourself as Christian. How do you interact, or how would you interface with this teaching of the world? I struggle to go through this every day. Now, we need to live by the golden rule. We need to live by the rules in the Bible. Now, rule number 1, our obligation to our fellow man. The golden rule says to do. To do. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophet. To do. The second law is the obligation of love. John chapter 13, verse 34 to 35. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The obligation to love one another is there. The obligation of kindness, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Be kind to others, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. Be kind to others, show compassion, maintain a soft and caring heart. Let go of grudges and resentment. Number 4, obligation to be compassionate and also gentleness. First Peter chapter 1, verse First Peter chapter 3, verse 8. Finally, all of you be of one minded, having compassion for one another, love as brother, be tender-hearted and be courteous. Let your gentleness be known to all men. Be compassionate, be gentle. And last but not least, be a person who forgives. Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 and 15. If you forgive men of their trespasses, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you of your trespasses. And then you shall be merciful. Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. So these are all obligations that we as Christians should adhere to. It's not like a law that is written and stick all over the wall, something that we should reflect upon ourselves. What should we do as Christian? Why do we come to church? Kindness and compassion. Something that we need to think about as we live our life daily. Now, rules are rules. How do we practice? How do we apply the rules? Now, of course, there are different ways to apply the rules in our life. Self-practicing the golden rule. What do I need to do to live on the rule? First, if I want to be able to trust in and confide in a friend, what do I need to do? I should be trustworthy. I should never betray somebody who tell me something inconfidential. I should never tell people secrets that I'm not supposed to tell. If I do not want what I said to be misquoted, okay, means that I should be careful not to quote something somebody has said to me incorrectly. If you don't understand something, don't repeat. Now, the context here is also taken in if you are a working adult, and if you misquote what your colleague has told you, it's not good. If I would like others to give me the benefit of the doubt, this means that I want to be inclined to believe that the best of me. Okay, I want others to believe that I can do it. I need to be able to show that I can do it. Love, believe in all things. If I need to show love, people need to believe that I can show the reciprocity of love. I don't like it when someone embarrasses me. To avoid embarrassment. How do I do that? I don't like to be hurt. I don't like people to make fun of me. Some people don't like to be joked upon or be ridiculed. So how do I avoid this? Well, if I practice the golden rule, I would myself be careful not to embarrass people. Look upon myself. If I don't hurt other people's feeling, maybe that will come back to me. If I don't want others to offend my conscience, I'll be careful not to offend my brethren consciousness. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 12 to 13, if you're taking notes. I should show interest in what is more important to the other person, even though it is not otherwise important to me. This is an interesting one, because as many leaders, if you grow in your field of work, you're always being taught to listen to your team, show interest and listen to your team and what their feedback are, and then speak your mind, not to speak over their conversation. Next one is interesting. I should treat every woman with the same respect I would want other men to give to my wife and daughter. Now, this is a very hot topic right now in the world, respect for women. I should try to be as considerate of the condition of a sick person I visit in the hospital as I want to be treated in the role when reversed. Interesting enough, many of us are not put in this situation where, when we visit or when we, go to somebody who is not well, attend to a sick person. How do we react? How do we, go into that hospital room? What do we say? What do we bring? What conversation do we need to have? I've not done many of that in my entire life, honestly. Needless to say, my kids has never done it at all in their life. Is it because we don't have a chance to? I'm not sure. Sorry, my slide is just going to leave it too long. I should be sympathetic to someone bereaved at the loss of a loved one through death, as I would wish others to be empathetic towards me. Interesting enough, again, the idea of how do we carry ourselves if we walk into a funeral. All right. Again, I've not experienced that in this country over the last 5-10 years. How do we go into a wake, and how do we interact with the relative or somebody who is mourning a person who just passed away? I think the last wake that I attended was in Malaysia many years ago. But yeah, it's a situation where you're not taught to do what you need to do. You're just put into a situation where you just have to, you just have to be conscious of what you say, what you do. And last but not least, to show some interest in the spiritual welfare of the brethren around you, to bring someone to Christ. Now, every one of us has our own challenges. I look at all these 10 golden rules, and I look at it and think about it. I reflect upon this. These are rules and regulations or policy or whatever you call it. These are things that are not easy for Christians to follow. Okay. Now, the application, again, how do we apply the golden rule? Is it's the solution provided by the Bible to all of us, not only to Christian but to human being. For all our problems today, for all the issues and challenges today, how do we deal with the congregation as leaders of the congregation? How do you deal with your workers, your employees, if you're an employee, if you're a boss of a company? How do you deal with your children, if you're parents of a family? How do you deal with your husband, your wife? These are all guidelines. Golden rules, guidelines, law, everything can be broken. And everything can be, everything could either be broken, you don't follow the rules, you get punished, or you follow the rules and you get rewarded, or you'll be put you'll be put aside and you'll be living your life comfortably without being interrupted. It's a choice. It's a choice between being punished or living on your life. It's a choice between going to hell or going to heaven. It's a choice where Christians are put in a situation where you reflect on what the law of the land asks us to do versus what we are asked to do in the Bible. Now, I'll let I'll stop there and let us think about and ponder about the facts and points that I've shared. As we continue to strive and live in this challenging world, we all should pray that God give us the direction and the wisdom to continue to live.